What's good, African family? Welcome back to the African Wahala. We talk about African issues, global Africans, reasons why we are where we are. We also commend those people that are blazing the trails, trying to set us up for a brighter future. If you like this type of content, click on the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share the video as well. So we all heard about the rumors of a coup in Ivory Coast, West African country, recently. It was all over social media for a couple of days, starting on the 21st of May, 2025. We heard about the chief of army staff was gunned down. And then we also heard rumors about that was fake news. We also heard the president was kicked out of that position by some top military guys that have an affiliation with Burkina Faso. The bottom line is a lot of us were excited about a coup in Ivory Coast because Ouattara, the president of Ivory Coast, is one of the last pieces of the puzzle in West Africa that remains a gatekeeper for neocolonization, that maintains the structure that requires African countries to remain controlled by foreign entities. So that's why a lot of people were excited about a coup in Ivory Coast. But we have some more information about what exactly was going on. There were so many rumors. We heard about the internet was shut down. And it's a usual gameplay, a usual strategy that these corrupt politicians use. Whenever there is some sort of uprising against them, they often shut down the internet because it's one of the few ways they can manipulate the system to keep us subservient and enslaved to them. So let's listen to this video. We're going to react to it together about more details from Abidjan, the capital of Ivory Coast.
When the spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. That's an ancient African proverb, and right now, something is happening in Ivory Coast that proves just how powerful united webs can become. On May 21st, 2025, social media exploded with reports of chaos in Abidjan. Videos of protesters flooding the streets, claims of internet shutdowns, whispers of military movements, allegations of coup attempts that could change everything. But then, silence. Major news outlets stayed quiet. International media looked the other way. It's just like someone pressed the mute button on an entire nation's cry for freedom. I'm Asonga Luis, and this is a Strategic Lens. Today, we are going deep into what mainstream media won't. Today, we are uncovering the Ivory Coast crisis that has Western powers scrambling and African revolutionaries celebrating. Because what happened, or what they are claiming happened in Ivory Coast, isn't just about one country. It's about a domino that could topple an entire system of control that has been choking Africa for decades.
Thank you so much to this guy that made this video. Very, very eye-opening. I just wanted to make a quick correction to something he said that we should consider. He said the domino effect that we are trying to break that entails the control of African countries for decades. I just wanted to correct that one single line. It's more about for centuries. It's longer than a decade for sure, because the entire colonization, slavery, and neo-colonization process of Africa began at least 400 years ago. Just wanted to put that there.
Let me walk you through what we know and what we don't know. May 21st, 2025, reports start flooding social media. Thousands of Ivorians allegedly on the streets. Government buildings reportedly on fire. Internet connectivity issues across the country. Claims of up to 33 unalives between May 19th and May 20th. But here is where it gets interesting and suspicious. Why these reports spread like wildfire across X, Facebook, and WhatsApp? Not a single major international news outlet confirmed these events. BBC, silence. Reuters, nothing. Al Jazeera, radio silence. Now, you might think, maybe it didn't happen, but hold on. Let me ask you something. When has Western media ever been shy about reporting African instability? When
I'm not gonna lie. I was beginning to doubt if something actually happened in Ivory Coast, and I'm not even sure. I'm not 100% sure because we are both watching this video together for the first time, reacting to it. Um, but when I searched on the internet looking for any information about the toppling of Alassane Ouattara of Ivory Coast, I couldn't find anything. Nothing on mainstream media houses, Al Jazeera, the usual suspects, BBC, CNN, all these guys. Nobody had nothing. Even the mainstream African media houses like africanews.com, there was no information about a coup. So we were left to be speculating, but it was also easy to speculate because it became suspicious not seeing any posts from people of Ivory Coast for a couple of days. So let's keep watching.
Have they ever missed an opportunity to show Africa in chaos? Unless this wasn't the chaos they wanted you to see. Unless this was the kind of uprising that threatens their interests rather than serves them. Because according to reports that did circulate, something unprecedented was happening. The Ivorian people weren't just protesting, they were celebrating the possibility of military intervention. They were allegedly welcoming a potential coup. When was the last time you heard Africans celebrating a coup? When was the last time you heard people took to the streets to ask their military to overcome their government? When? To understand what's really happening in Ivory Coast, we need to understand the perfect storm that's been brewing. Three explosive ingredients have been mixing up in this West African nation, and the combination is proving deadly for those who profit from the status quo. Ingredient number one, a secret military deal that nobody asked for. While Ivorians were going about their daily lives, their government was reportedly negotiating with the United States to host American drone bases near the border with Burkina Faso and Mali. Now think about that. Surveillance drones that are pointed directly to the revolutionary governments that have been inspiring African youths across the continent. Ingredient number two, President Alassane Ouattara, the man who once promised to step down after 2 terms, decided the constitution didn't apply to him. Third term, no problem. Exclude opposition leaders. That was easy. Install your brother as the defense minister. Why not keep it to the family? But then, the third ingredient was the catalyst that sparked everything. An American general's inflammatory statement that united Africans from Lagos to London, from Accra to Atlanta. April 3rd, 2025, General Michael Langley, head of U.S. Africa Command, walked into the Senate hearing and made a statement so provocative, so disrespectful to African sovereignty, that ignited a continental firestorm. What did he say, and why did it trigger such massive backlash that it might have contributed to the events we are investigating today?
If you remember, as a matter of fact, let's keep watching.
General Michael Langley looked at the United States senators and said these exact words about Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. Captain Traoré in Burkina Faso, their gold reserves are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
Chairman, I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, is their gold reserves. That is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
Now, wait. Captain Ibrahim Traoré isn't any African leader. Since taking power in 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has done what many thought was impossible in modern Africa. He nationalized his country's gold mines, taking them away from foreign operations. He built Burkina Faso's first gold refinery, meaning they processed their own wealth instead of shipping raw materials to Europe. He survived multiple assassination attempts. He formed a military alliance with Mali and Niger, and he told the world that Africa's resources belong to Africans. When General Langley accused Traoré of misusing gold reserves, he was attacking the very idea that Africans can't manage their own wealth without Western oversight. The response was swift and thunderous. Protesters erupted in cities across Africa. The diaspora mobilized from Detroit to London. Even General Langley's ancestral village in Senegal sent a video message calling his comments a betrayal of his African heritage. But here is where our story takes an unexpected turn.
I just want to say that I was, in my entire lifetime, I was so proud and so happy on April 30th when African people from all over the world united in the same voice, standing in support of Ibrahim Traoré. That was such a golden moment in my lifetime.
Turn just weeks after General Langley made these inflammatory comments. Guess where Langley decided to visit? Ivory Coast. April 24th to 25th, 2025. Less than 3 weeks after insulting Captain Ibrahim Traore, General Langley is sitting comfortably in Abidjan, meeting with President Ouattara and his defense minister.
Now, before I keep going, I need to remind you something. The United States of America loves Ouattara, right? They love him. They would rather work with him. They want to build military drones in his country, not to his own benefit or the benefit of his country, but to their detriment. Alassane Ouattara got into power in 2010. First term of his presidency was for 5 years, up to 2015. And then there was another election in 2015 where he won again. And then the Constitution of the Ivory Coast only allows 2 terms of 5 years each for a president. But how come magically Alassane Ouattara is still the president of the Ivory Coast in 2025? That's 15 years. So that is obviously against the Constitution. But this is the type of guy that the United States of America would rather partner with in Africa. Someone that violates the Constitution, that stages democratic coups. That's what they want. And you know why? Because the guy gives them free hand. Oh, come into our country, set up drone bases, attack anybody you perceive to be a threat against the interest of the United States, even though that threat is not a physical threat to the US, it's an economic benefit to the African people, because the African people want to be in control of their resources and build wealth for themselves and have a decent life. But that is a threat to the United States government for African people to have control of their natural resources and build wealth for themselves. It's a threat to the United States of America. That's why the United States government would rather work with an Alassane Ouattara, someone that violated the coup and on democratic entity. They claim that they want democracy in Africa, right? But obviously, Ouattara is not a Democrat, because there is no way you can be in power for 15 years when the Constitution only allows you to be in power for a maximum of 10 years. But let's keep on going. Just showing you some hypocrisy of the American government.
What do you think they were discussing? Officially, regional security threats, but sources suggest they were finalizing details about that controversial drone deal. American surveillance aircraft positioned to monitor Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, think about the optics here. You have an American general who just accused an African revolutionary of corruption, now causing with a president who have been accused of electoral manipulation, constitutional violations, and blatant nepotism. What message does this send to the Ivorian people? That America supports democracy, or that America supports anyone willing to defend America's interests, regardless of how they treat their own people? But the Ivorian people aren't stupid. They have been watching what is happening next door. They have seen Mali expelled France and regain their sovereignty. They have seen Burkina Faso building gold mines and refineries. They have seen Niger forming alliances based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. They are asking themselves, why are we still hosting military bases? Why are we still sending our cocoa abroad for processing? Why is our president still hanging around with people who insult our African brothers?
You know, I feel like we are at a good time in history where there's so much information that we have access to, and it makes a lot of us more enlightened and educated. Like what this guy just said, he was talking about processing raw materials, you know, as opposed to exporting raw materials. African countries now are beginning to process the raw materials, which generates more revenue. Like 10, 15 years ago, this wasn't common knowledge. I didn't even know this myself. Like 10 years ago, I had no clue how the economic situation worked All I knew was that I was a so-called citizen of a country and I was just living, just trying to exist. But with the access to information and more people understanding how economies are supposed to work, it's a good feeling. And it's only going to lead to more uprisings against gatekeepers of the current status quo.
Whether or not a full coup occurred on May 21st, and remember, this still remains unverified by major news outlets. What we do know is that Ivorian frustrations have been building for months. When opposition candidate Tijane Thiam was barred from running using a 64-year-old law never used before, people noticed when protest was consistently banned or met with police blockade. People remembered when internet connectivity mysteriously suffered during political tensions. People connected the dots. The reports that did surface painted a picture unlike anything we have ever seen in recent African politics. Instead of people fleeing from military action, they were allegedly celebrating it. Instead of fearing the coup, they were reportedly welcoming it. Why? Because they have seen what's possible. They have watched their neighbors break free from new colonial control. They have seen that another way is possible. There is an African proverb: however far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. The Ivorian people haven't forgotten that they are Africans first, and they are watching as the continental family reclaims dignity, sovereignty, and control over their own resources. But here is what makes this potential uprising different from past coups in Africa. This isn't about replacing one puppet with another. It's about replacing an entire system of dependency with one of sovereignty. And that's exactly what Western powers are desperate to prevent. Now, I'm going to tell you why this story has been buried, why major media outlets have remained silent, and why Western governments are panicking behind closed doors. They don't want you to see this because it represents their worst nightmare: Africa united in resistance. Now think about the domino effect. Mali breaks free, then Burkina Faso, then Niger. Chad ends its military agreement with France. Senegal announces French bases must close. And now Cote d'Ivoire, supposedly France's most reliable West African ally, is showing signs of awakening. If Ivory Coast joins the alliance of Sahel states, if they kick out foreign military bases, if they start processing their own cocoa and controlling their own resources, what happens next? Ghana starts asking questions. Togo begins reconsidering those American drone-based proposals. Entire Western strategy in West Africa collapses. What happens when East African countries see that it's possible to survive without Western military presence? What happens when Southern African nations realize they don't need foreign corporations to process their minerals? Imagine an Africa where Ghanaian cocoa is processed in Ghana, where Congolese cobalt is powering African technology, where Nigerian oil is fueling African development, where South African gold backs currencies. That's why they don't want you to see what's happening in Ivory Coast, because every African uprising that succeeds makes the next one more likely.
I mean, it's already happening, to be honest, to be fair, because the coups started in 2021 and it spread across about 6 countries, including Central African countries like Gabon. However, the coup in Gabon it still had some deepings of the West. You know, the guy that took over power has been proven to be a stooge as well. So we think about Guinea. Guinea also had that coup, Mamadi Doumbouya. And with the Doumbouya coup, lots of suspicion as well, because a lot of people were wondering, why didn't Guinea join the Alliance for Sahel States? That would have been a great confederation. But regardless, even non-military takeovers like in Namibia, where they have a great president, Madame Nintwa, sorry, I don't want to mispronounce the name. She's beginning to nationalize some minerals. Like what that guy said, imagine when African countries are beginning to produce, or rather convert, raw materials into finished products. And that's exactly what they started doing in Namibia. As opposed to having American companies like vultures swarming around looking for how to make a quick buck from refining crude oil in African countries without having to get the necessary license. All they need to do is grease the palms of the corrupt officials. Madam Dintua in Namibia has cut that off. So the revolution happening in the Sahel states is beginning to have a ripple effect where more people are inspired, more countries are inspired to make similar moves. So it makes so much sense that the Western government will want us not to have access to the Ivory Coast situation.
Now, here is the truth they don't want you to understand, whether or not there was a military coup on May 21st. There have definitely been a mental coup across Africa. Young Africans are no longer accepting that their resources must enrich foreign corporations. They are no longer believing that their leaders must bow to foreign generals. They are no longer accepting that their future must be determined by people who have never walked in their shoes. The real coup isn't happening in presidential palaces. It's happening in the minds of African people across the world. From the universities of Accra to the markets in Lagos, from the diasporan communities in London to the tech hubs in Nairobi, Africans are staging a coup against mental colonization. Whether you're watching this from Abidjan or from Atlanta, from Dakar or Detroit, you are part of this moment. The question isn't whether change is coming to Africa. Change is already here. The question is, are you going to be part of the solution or part of the problem? So here's what I want you to do. Share this video and, more importantly, share this perspective, because every time an African person anywhere in the world understands that our resources, our leadership, and our future don't have to be dictated by foreign powers, the movement grows even stronger. The coup they don't want you to see isn't just happening in Ivory Coast. It is happening everywhere. It's happening wherever Africans are waking up to their own power. And once we are fully awake, there is no force on earth that will put us back to sleep. This is the strategic lens. The revolution won't be televised, but it will be understood. Until my next video. Bye.
Amen. Amen, brother. Yeah, that was such a eye-opening video, even though he didn't really explain if there was a coup or not. So we're not even 100% sure still. And this is May 25th, and we're not still sure if there was a coup in the Ivory Coast or not. But the clear message is people are mentally ready for a change. And a lot more people are aware of what is going on in Africa. A lot of African peoples are beginning to be more rebellious to the status quo. And the status quo, like we all know, is a situation of consistent poverty, hopelessness, and fully being controlled by Western powers and sometimes Eastern powers. But yeah, we're going to go to the next story quickly. It's going to be a quick reaction. This one is like, so this is Peter Obi, the main man. He's one of the most popular political figures in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians put their support behind him. He's the guy sitting in the middle. The guy sitting on the left, or rather on the right side, is Atiku Abubakar, former vice president of Nigeria. He has been running for the position of presidency since 1992. So for 33 years, this guy has been trying to be the president of Nigeria. Not that he has anything to offer, don't get it wrong. It's more like a personal ambition for these guys. Just like the current guy that is the president, Tinubu. When Tinubu got there, he said, before he got there, he said, "Emi lo kan," which means it's my turn. So that is the mentality of the Nigerian politicians and even normal human beings that are good. Once they get into the political space, they conform and become evil. That's just how it is in the Nigerian system. The guy sitting on the left is Rotimi Amechi, former governor of Rivers State, very corrupt guy, just like Atiku Abubakar. Both guys that surround Peter Obi, extremely corrupt people. Obi, on the other hand, I'm not going to call him corrupt because a lot of people simply will chew you off. They'll cut your head off if you call him corrupt. They literally worship this guy. They don't want you to criticize him. If you criticize this guy, they're going to call you a tribalist. They're going to tell you that you don't know anything. They're just going to be disparaging towards you. And I'm just going to say that this picture looks very horrible because there is no way that you sit between two extremely corrupt people that contributed to the destruction of Nigeria, obviously, even self-confessed. We call this guy Mr. SPV, Atiku Abubakar. Atiku Abubakar son is a billion. They're all billionaires, just so you know, because the Nigerian political system, once you get in, you become a billionaire. That's how it works. You simply steal money and nobody is going to hold you accountable. That's just how it works. And eventually the system is not going to survive because it's not sustainable. People have tried many times to change the system, but it's almost impossible. And it looks like what these guys are trying to do is come in a coalition of some sort and to tell Nigerians that we are going to rescue you. The country is horrible and we're going to rescue you from this horrible country. The horrible leaders that are currently there in the country, we want to rescue you from them in the 2027 elections. So that's what this meeting is about. Happening now, the National Political Consultative Group has just commenced. So these are the people that Obi is associating with. And if you use common sense, right, just be a logical, rational human being, you should understand why some of us view him as the same as the people that he surrounds himself with. Because if you surround yourself with obvious, criminally minded, evil politicians that have destroyed the lives of people, and you continue to surround yourself with them all the time, you try to build alliances with them, then you're just like them. And that's just my own personal opinion. But we're going to go to the next video where it's about the Alimajiri system this time around. This guy is a Hausa guy from the north, and he had a lot of interesting things to say. So now we've left the Ivory Coast conversation, and now we're talking about some Nigerian situation. Check this out.
So the hardest thing I've had to accept since I've been here is that Hausas, my tribe, my people, unfortunately are not going to allow Nigeria to become what it's meant to be. The mindset of the northern Nigerians are going to destroy this country. I'm sorry to say it. So this is an idea I had, right? It was very simple. Raise money, build orphanages, massive orphanages, and pick up the Almajiris off the street. Take the Almajiris off the street. Teach them engineering. Teach them tech. Teach them coding. Take them off the streets and teach them, try to get them up to par so they can compete. And I brought up how every time I had this conversation, I would bring up the 4 Indian kids, the 4 Indian boys, like 10-year-old boys that were online. They were doing the live chat and building an app. Every time I bring up this idea to a northerner, the first thing they ask is, well, what about Islam? What about Qur'ani? What about Islamic school? When I say I have met incredible resistance to the idea of taking these boys off the streets and getting them to join the global age. Like, my mindset is this. Every corner you go in northern Nigeria, there are 5 people willing to teach these boys Islamic school, Quran. There are 10 people willing to teach them everything they need to learn about Islam. Why isn't there anyone willing to teach them anything else? So when I brought that up, some people were like, I had people going, it will never happen unless I have to teach them Islamic curriculum in the schools. I said, you don't understand. Northern Nigerians are against the idea of changing the trajectory and the outcomes of Almajiris. They say Almajirenchi, which is what it is embedded in our culture. And here's the thing. No, it's not. And as a Muslim, it's haram. I fucking said it. Any northern Nigerian that wants to step the fuck up, do it. It is haram. because you are not allowed to bring a child into this world that you cannot raise. And there are northern fuck ton of Hausa men and women who have babies with no intention of, they know they will only take care of that child for a certain age, then they'll pawn that child off. There are a fuck ton of imams, men in the north, who rely on these kids for a living. They send these boys out every day to go earn a living to come back and give them. I thought up an idea that, look, we need to find a way to raise money, build orphanages, teach these boys tech, teach them engineering, teach them robotics, let them compete with the global populace. And every time I bring this up, every fucking Hausa person I tell this shit to wants to argue with me. They say it's not going to. They are vehemently against this. So I need you to understand, I need to ask you, how will Nigeria as a fucking country compete with the likes of Ghana, South Africa, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, when the northern Nigeria is part of Nigeria? The most fucked up thing I'm going to have to say as a Hausa man is, for Nigeria to advance, they have to get rid of Hausa.
So, there's quite a few things to say here to break down. The Alimajaris. First off, let me start by saying I do not necessarily agree that Hausa people are the ones that are responsible for the destruction of Nigeria, although 70% of the presidency in Nigeria has been controlled by people from that region. And we all know what the story is today about Nigeria. So yeah, you might say, yeah, Hausa people have a huge problem contributing to the detriment of Nigeria. Yeah, that's legitimate. But every other region is contributing to the destruction of Nigeria as well. It's not just the Hausa people. And these days we are beginning to differentiate between the Hausas and the Fulanis in Nigeria. And nobody is painting any group as the evil group that destroys a country or that destroyed the country, because everybody participated one way or the other. But this guy makes a lot of sense at the same time, because the Alimajiri culture, which I'm going to show you a little bit of shortly. Sorry. The Alimajiri culture, right? I'll show you what it is. So this is pretty much the Alimajiri culture in Nigeria, especially in the north, because 99% of them are in the northern part of Nigeria. The Alimajiris make up most of the out-of-school children. So kids of school age that are supposed to be in school, they are sent out there to beg for alms. They have these bowls that they, beg for alms with, and it's indoctrinated into them from a young age. So as young as 4 years old, 3 years old, sometimes you're given a pan to go panhandle, make as much money as you can, feed yourself with the scraps that people give you, come back to your Alimajiri teacher at the end of the day and give him some of that money. So your Alimajiri teacher teaches you the Quran or some religious readings. That's the exchange. Now, how do these kids get to the so-called Alimajiri teachers? By their parents. Because a lot of their parents have no education, just like the kids that are born. The parents were born into a society without education, without access to nothing. So they had no clue about family planning. They had no clue about the economic situation, and not realizing that you're not supposed to have kids if you can't take care of them. They just put everything on religion. So religion is a huge poison in the minds of African people to a large extent. And we all know that. So when that guy comes around and is explaining to us that Hausa people are the problem of Nigeria, I get where he's coming from. You understand what I'm saying? And I empathize with him because he's trying to be as truthful as possible as a Hausa guy himself. But Nigeria is the real problem of Nigeria. It's not even the Hausas. Because Nigeria is the reason why religions fester as much as they do. Not just in the north, even in the south. I mean, you find every single street that you go to, there are like 10 churches everywhere. Every single, bro, out of every 10 persons, one person is a pastor. 10% of the population are pastors. What kind of bro, they're lying. There is no way that 10% of a population are pastors or imams or some sort of religious teachers because it's a business. The reason why these guys get into the pastorpreneurial business, because that's what I call it, pastorpreneurial business. It's not a real word that exists, but we just made it up. These guys are pastorpreneurs, and they go into their business centers to make money off hopeless people. And what do hopeless people have? Is religion, because the religion gives them hope, right? So we now have a society that has been completely destroyed. 15 million people, children out of school, no education. They are forced to go to Alimajiri centers to get indoctrinated, and nothing happens. So I get this guy's pain. I get where he's coming from, being very harsh towards the Hausa people. It's not the Hausa people that are destroying Nigeria, my brother. Nigeria was set up to self-destruct. Nigeria is a self-immolating entity. And that's why eventually there is nothing none of us can do about it. We are not going to be able to rescue Nigeria because the way Nigeria was created is in a self-destructive fashion. And that's why every aspect of Nigeria is destroying Nigeria. This is not even about Nigeria. I mean, about the Hausas. It's about Nigeria. Nigeria itself is a self-destructing entity. And that's why everybody and everything that is trapped within Nigeria will work towards destroying Nigeria eventually.
They have to get the North, Nigeria, it can never work. This is a sad realization that it can never work. Like, this is insane. And I am Hausa. This is fucking crazy. Wait, let me show you something. Right here, this is attestation of citizenship from New York. As you can see, I am from Shanono local Gwamang in Kano State. I am as fucking Northern Hausa as it fucking gets. I am as Aboki as it could possibly fucking get. And I am saying Nigeria, to win, to compete on the global stage, Nigeria will have to get rid of the North. It will not happen with my people are actively holding this country back. It is so fucking insane.
Well, brother, there was never a country in the first place. A lot of us were indoctrinated into thinking that there was one, but there was never a country, right? You don't just come around. Imagine a country that was created in such a way that the people that created the country came from somewhere else. They mapped out the country, gave it a name for themselves to the detriment of the inhabitants. And then the inhabitants of that entity maintained every single structure of the entity for 125 years. Because this whole mess started in 1900. And this is 2025, year 2025. So for 125 years, Nigeria kept the name Nigeria that has no meaning in any Nigerian ethnic group or the people that are trapped within Nigeria. None of the 300 ethnic groups has that word Nigeria in its vocabulary. None. So the name doesn't exist. But the people that have been in charge of Nigeria didn't feel the need to change the name. Burkina Faso was also called the Upper Volta at some point. They changed it to Burkina Faso, land of upright people. Maybe that's why they have a lot of upright people from Burkina Faso. They come around every so often to show the rest of us that, listen, man, we are a land of upright people. Same thing with Ghana. Ghana was once called the Gold Coast by the colonizers. And then Kwame Nkrumah changed its name to Ghana, a name that has a meaning to the people of Ghana, excuse me. Ivory Coast that we're just talking about earlier in the live stream, Ivory Coast was given that name by the colonizers. They never changed the name as well. And maybe that's why they have the same stooge problem that Nigeria has till this day. But it might not be as hopeless as Nigeria. Nigeria, on the other hand, definitely hopeless. But let me know what you think about these reactions. Click on the like button if you like this type of content. Share the video, like, subscribe, and drop your comments in the comment section. Peace.